Hello, and welcome to another episode of Explicit Materia, the podcast where a nerdy drummer talks to his friends. Follow me on Twitter at the WiseDrums, Instagram at WiseDrums, Facebook at WiseDrums, or you can follow the Explicit Materia Facebook page. And of course, subscribe to youtube.com/WiseDrums, where I post clips of this podcast and other stuff like my review of the video game The Technomancer. It's for PS4, it's pretty fun. So check that out when you can. Friendly disclaimer, if you're easily offended by any controversial or satirical or seemingly offensive material, please move on. This podcast is not for you. Any disagreements you might have with the points presented, I'd love to hear what you have to say via Twitter or the YouTube comments section. And here's what you'll be experiencing this episode. Howard Buckwold, musician, producer, and aspiring psychologist, joins me this episode to talk psychology. The psychology of mass shooters, political correct thinking, politics, marketing, religion. I mean, we just get friggin' deep with it. I almost sound like I know what I'm talking about, but odds are I probably don't. In any case, I hope you guys enjoy the conversation as much as I did.
Do you have a sponsor? Do you need sponsors yet?
No, not yet. I'm waiting. I'm building up my audience.
What's your audience like? How does that work? You get some kind of metrics, right?
Yeah, when you go through Libsyn, I get my hosting through Libsyn, and so you get your metrics and your graphs.
They tell you how many people you gain in like a week or month or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's by month.
You gain in some audience.
Yeah. I think I'm getting past 2,000 downloads.
Yeah, dude.
So that's cool.
Right,
So
you can't guarantee that everyone's listening, but
yet.
like a high percentage probably is.
It's not to that point where I can go up to an advertiser and be like, "Hey, I got a podcast," just like 100 million other people. But mine's better.
I would guess we're around 10,000 is probably where you can start trying to pick up some sponsorship.
Yeah, so I'm just and plus it's just more. It's more or less fun. It's a fun way it's sort of another reason to just invite all my friends over and we just have a conversation.
Talk about whatever.
Because life gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah, it does.
And just...
Especially when you start getting a little older and then, like in my case, when you have a family. Like, my choices aren't my own most of the time anymore. Which is good and bad.
Yeah.
I have a schedule, whether I want it or not. And it's probably good for me because having a schedule keeps me kind of sort of balanced.
Is it crazy just knowing that you made a kid?
Yeah. I mean, he's like over a year and a half, and I'm like, this is fucking surreal. What? My jizz made that thing. It's a human being.
It's like the Dave Chappelle joke. He's like, about his kid gave him like the finger painting or whatever. He said, "Dad, I made this for you." And he's like, "Son, that's great, but this is fucking crazy. You came from my balls, man." I was like, that's way to turn a really nice moment into
sweet moment into something really crass.
But that's why Dave Chappelle is the best.
Dave Chappelle is great. I haven't seen all of his new stuff.
It's good.
Is it?
Yeah, they're really good.
I know it's the first one that came out. I watched it and I was like, yeah, pretty fucking fun. I think I was still...
Hold that thought. Keep going.
I think I was still... I was still seeing you on the regular at that time when that came out. Maybe.
Yes.
Around that time. Because I remember talking to you about that. Around that time. I don't remember. Time just goes by and like it's really hard to hold on to it.
I know. It's just... Like you wake up and it's like 10 years later.
I know.
Shit, man. I always look at the house every now and then. Like, man, I own this place.
Yeah, that's
I'm
crazy.
not renting anymore.
You guys have been in this house for a while now, right?
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years, and now we're looking to upgrade.
Yeah. I heard you talking about that.
Yeah, looking to
move to a farm situation, right?
Yeah. Do a farm thing, turn into a little event space, and do
that's
the
rad.
thing.
I feel like that's kind of a thing now, though, right? Like people do that. I don't know. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah, but you haven't seen my wife do events.
No, I'm sure she does an awesome job.
No, she's probably the most organized individual that I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, like you're definitely not talking about me.
Or me. She has made me more organized just
I know that
being
feeling.
with her.
Like, I try really hard to be organized, but I can only be organized in things I'm really, really interested in. And even then, it's still a struggle.
Yeah.
Like, the creative personality type where you're like, and I'm like super ADHD.
I wanted to pick your brain because you are going back to school for psychology.
I am.
So are you going back? Did you start and then
So I started 2012, I think. I started this degree. And when I was in California. So I went to LA. I did the music school thing for a couple of years. I got a 2-year degree in music, guitar performance.
Guitar performance. What do they teach you in guitar performance?
I mean, it's a 2-year degree in, like the same thing you do at a university, except you don't have to do any English or math or any kind of foundational educational stuff. And because it's not a 4-year school, like, it's accredited, but I don't know how hard they work to, like, make sure there's, like, a really high quality level of students coming out of the school. Probably, I mean, when I was there, I heard teachers talking about, like, well, when I was a student here, like, you had to be really, I had to practice. I'm like, now you can just kind of get through it. And I'm like, that's probably how it was back then, too. You just were one of those students that worked hard because you're really talented.
Yeah.
And in some of my classes, I did really well. In some classes, I was, like, just skin my teeth, kind of. Like, I'm never going to be great at reading guitar or sheet music because I learned to read music as a kid. I played trumpet and I played drums and I read for both of those instruments. But I picked up the guitar and I was like, I'm going to teach myself. And like, Guitar World magazine has tab. That's all I need. And like,
Well, yeah, but isn't that it's interesting because tabs and other forms of reading music that are a lot simpler, like the Nashville number system. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just easier than,
Yeah, it is, but it isn't. I mean, like, I appreciate. I mean, I can read music. I'm not a sight reader. You can't put a string of 16th notes in front of me. I'm like, yeah, nah, I'm not doing that. Like, yeah. Like, let me go away with this for a few minutes. And by a few minutes, I mean, I'll never come back. And it's just my brain just is not into that. And maybe if I had started reading for guitar when I was a teenager, when I started playing when I was like 11 or 12, then it would have been, it's like a language. It would have stuck. Yeah. I would have like not had to think about it so much. Like, I'm an okay reader, not the worst, but I'm not ever going to be like, no one's ever going to be like, hey, we need a good sight reader. Get Howard in here. I'll be like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm terrible.
I was the same way. My drum teacher, when I was taking lessons, the first thing because you notice I had just natural talent because I've grown up with bands. And, yeah,
no, right? You are very talented.
I know, it's crazy. But he noticed that, but he noticed a little bit of cockiness in me because I could play drums. And the first thing he did was show me how you hold a stick. It's completely wrong. I had to hold it up to here and, just...
Bicycle grip.
Yeah, bicycle grip,
I remember
whatever.
that shit.
It's like, that's wrong! And this kind of like whiplash situation where, the teacher's hard on you.
Yeah,
but there's that. But then the second thing he wanted to teach me was sight reading and reading jazz and getting into jazz. And I hated it.
Yeah,
every minute I hated it. And then, I kind of just forgot after I stopped taking lessons and kind of made up my own. Well, I made up my own system that made it easier for me to understand and sight read.
But we've talked about this before, I think, but you have a basic understanding of the structure of written music.
Right.
Like, you understand what a 16th note, a 64th note is, and 4/4 times, 6/8 times. You know all that stuff.
Yeah.
And really, once you understand how music is put together in a way that you can talk to somebody else about it, that's all you really need. Unless you're like, I'm going to be a classical musician, and then you need a lot more. But I don't want to be a classical musician. I love classical music. Well, a small portion of it, let's be honest. But I love all kinds of music, but I just don't have the ear to be drawn into listening to nothing but like Bach concertos all day long, or, etudes. And part of that is when I studied at MI, Musicians Institute, since not everyone knows what MI is. I did a lot of that stuff, and I was probably a lot better at reading then than I am now because I did it every day. I don't know how many hours a week I was playing, but a lot. I don't know what I was saying. I lost my train of thought.
Oh well, we started on this. We got off on this music track, but I was interested in your interest in psychology.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you asked me. Well, we going way back. You asked me about what I'm doing in school. Yeah, so I started a couple years after I left MI. I kind of got the bug and was like, I kind of want to just do a 4-year degree. Like, I know I can do it, and I'm smart enough. Mm-hmm. The reasons I hadn't done it is because I kind of was rebelling against the institution, man, and like really my dad,
the man.
And then I wanted to do music, and I'd already gotten a degree, a 2-year degree in recording when I was like 21, and I came back to Nashville and did that for a minute. But music and recording and all that's been my dream my whole life, or at least since I was old enough to have a solid like goal of this is what I love doing, this is what I love to do.
Right.
But I'm also really passionate about, I don't know, I'm curious, I like to learn, and people are the most fascinating thing in the world.
Tell me about it.
So I started studying stuff, and psychology was a pretty natural fit. So yeah, I guess I did that for a few years in LA, and then for a bunch of complicated reasons, perhaps, I decided to come back to Nashville, for a handful of reasons, psychological in nature. I was just really unhappy in LA.
Yeah.
And not because LA is a bad place, which that's another conversation. We'll get there.
There was a whole episode dedicated to that.
But I came back to Nashville and I didn't have a sense of belonging there. I was very isolated.
Yeah.
And it's a city that can do that pretty easily.
Yeah.
So I came back here and kind of just have like I putzed around for a while, and then not too long ago I had a shift in my life, not talking about having a family, but like work related stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, what am I fucking doing?
Yeah.
And it was like, I need to get back on this degree and see how much more I have to do. So I looked around and ended up going with, because I listened to too many podcasts, Southern New Hampshire University. They advertise, or they used to, on a number of podcasts I listened to. But really, I looked at like about a dozen online schools, and like MTSU, and Belmont's just too expensive.
Oh,
yeah. Stupid. And online is the most flexible, and it was cheaper to do online than to go to MTSU. Mm-hmm. Like by credit hour, it was like $10 or $20 cheaper per hour.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I don't really want to drive to Murfreesboro 4 days a week. Online is kind of harder, but I can do it.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that I'm in my, I've completed 4 classes. It's a really fast-paced situation. It's trimester system, so there's 6 sessions a year, and full-time online is 2 classes, and they say 30 plus hours a week, and I put in 30 or 40 hours a week easily. And it's nuts.
Wow.
Like last week was nuts. I would wanted to throw the computer against the wall, writing.
So
reviews.
when you dive right into the psychology, because I'm into psychology, not into psychology, but I'm fascinated.
You're fascinated.
I'm fascinated by people.
Hobbyist, so to speak.
I'm definitely a hobbyist. I like people like Steven Pinker. Like Steven Pinker, if you ever want some different perspective on the world and society today, just read.
Just listen to that guy.
Listen to that guy talk. Like he will make you feel like the world is in a much brighter place than it needs. That everyone's shoving negativity down your throat, and you listen to a lecture of him, and it's like, oh, okay. The world isn't as terrible as I had once thought. Maybe,
in this moment, yeah.
Steven Pinker, Jordan Peterson's another one. He's a fascinating individual. There's another one. I forget his name, but do they throw you in like, the Freuds, the Carl Jung, the Jean Piaget?
Yes, there's a lot of overlap from class to class. Which is, I think, kind of the nature of studying any subject. Once you get past the basics, if I'm studying, I took developmental psych twice because I had the credit, but they transferred it as an elective. So I'm like, well, it's required, so I guess I'm taking it again 5 years later. Not a problem. Some cool things have changed in 5 years. But the bulk of it was Piaget, Erikson, like, okay, I remember all of this. I don't remember all the stages, but I'm going to very quickly, which made the class kind of easy.
Right.
Well, at the same time, I was taking another psych class, I think, or, God, my memory's terrible. This was like a couple months ago. I'm like, what was I taking? But even classes it was like one psychology class and, probably a different psychology class. And there's just overlap. Like, I'm reading about Piaget in one class, but in a different direction, and then I'm reading about Piaget in the other class, but on a smaller kind of more of a note than like, this is really important to this field. It's like, you kind of have to know this to know this, because all education is like building on previously formed knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Or that's the idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot. Like, I'm constantly reading studies, which is cool and not cool, because there's a lot of information to try and hang on to, and we're not designed for that.
Yeah.
Like, the way we learn, like Western minds, Western cultures, is we prepare for a test, we take that test, and the information just starts to like go away, because there's no reason to hang on to it. So your brain's like, we don't need this. Just get it the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
But all those Pink Floyd lyrics, let's hold on to those, like, those are important.
That's why isn't there a thing?
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Isn't there a thing on Facebook that say forgetful people are actually really intelligent, because what they're doing is they're just storing information that they need, that they feel that is important.
Isn't that what everybody does?
Yeah, but that's what everyone does.
Yeah. I don't know. Intelligence is a weird thing. It's not like, there's different forms of intelligence, like, you can be really like Stephen Hawking level intelligence and have no emotional intelligence. Like, I'm very smart. I know tons about the world, the universe, physics, and like facts and trivia, but I have no idea how to relate to another human being. So there's different kinds of intelligence.
Right. Isn't there like 5 key traits, and isn't that a psychological thing, like openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness. And then I think Jonathan Haidt mentions it too. He wrote a book on the psychology of I think it was the psychology of politics or something. And he goes into why left people are left and right people are right, and I think he goes through the traits. And
interesting.
Like, if people are high in agreeableness and openness,
they tend to be liberal.
Liberal, and then that changes over time too.
I used to be more liberal than I am now.
Yeah,
I think that happens with age.
Yeah, and experience, and you start to see how the world really works, and you start paying bills, and you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah. Well, I think I've always been pretty jaded and cynical, which is a terrible way to be. But I think I started leaning towards the center like pretty young, and part of that was the influence of older dudes I was hanging out with. Like, when I started working at the first like studio I worked at, the only real studio I spent any major time at, it was me. I was 22, I think. It was like 2003, like 22, and it was me and this dude I'm the age now that he was then, which is like sometimes mind blowing. These dudes that were in their late 30s, early 40s, these two really incredible musicians that are still in Nashville, still doing awesome stuff. And I had the influence of their experience. Like, I don't know. It's like you learn from the people you're around, and they're more well, Rod Lewis, awesome bass player, awesome dude. He's way more conservative than I am, but he's still like progressively minded. He's still a smart dude.
Yeah. He's more like a libertarian, if you will.
Kind of, yeah. Although, what the hell does that even mean anymore?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like it's now devolved into so many different definitions. Well, they all have. Like, liberal is now it's mixed with the regressive left and liberal, but they're not the same thing. And then you have libertarians, but that's 7 different definitions, and you have conservatives, and it's like that's 7 different definitions too.
Yeah.
It's like, who do you like? That's the problem with labels. I think it's just we continue, and why do we do that in a psychological
why do we
sense?
Label?
Yeah. Is it a tribalistic evolutionary trait that we just love putting things into categories?
I don't think it's tribalistic. I don't think it's that. I mean, maybe in a sense it is, if you go back far enough, like the label of other, like group survival, like two warring tribes that live close enough to each other to like interact, but maybe they don't get along, or one's more aggressive than the other. Like,
right.
Then they have issues, and like we still use that like in politics. The concept of the other is like huge.
Yeah.
Like, look at like. I'm sorry. Look at Trump.
Yeah.
Like the Republicans are really good at being like other fake news. You know, like, and the Democrats are just not good at that. They're not good at branding. You know,
well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's so funny now that I'm like, you get older and you start to like put yourself out of the warring tribes, and you kind of look back and forth and you're like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
We're all a bunch of assholes and
you
idiots.
guys are all idiots.
Yeah.
You aren't listening to him and you aren't listening to him. What
yeah.
Just shut up for a second, use your ears, don't think the other person's an evil prick, and then try to come to some consensus.
Yeah, we're really not good at that. I mean, I don't know if we've ever been good at that.
No.
On a grand scale. We're really bad at it right now, I can say that. The politics in this country is... I don't even want to think about it, but I can't help it. It's in the forefront of what's happening in our country.
Everybody's talking about it. It's like you can't avoid it. Every single conversation divulges into, oh, did you hear what Trump did today? And it's like, oh my God. What did he do? Did he kill a puppy?
That would be great. Let's be honest. That would be a great talking point. Trump kills puppy. Yeah.
You know,
I wouldn't be surprised, would you?
I wouldn't be surprised
because I'm not surprised by anything anymore.
I'm not. Well, now they're going through this Stormy Daniels story, and you know, just
please God, don't let me see those dick pics.
Just don't let me see. At first, it was Russia, and then Stormy Daniels came, and then oh my gosh,
yeah,
it's like nothing is ever getting done. Like, how does this Stormy Daniels thing help anybody? It's not helping anybody. It was consensual, so she had even admitted it. So I
don't think that's the issue, though. I think it's the lying about it.
Oh yeah, of course. But are we surprised that Trump lied about it?
No, of course not. And then there's like, you know, I guess the question of like, did they use campaign funds to pay her off? And if they did, that's illegal use of campaign. But like, there's of course the opposition is going to be like, what can we get them on? You know, like, that's their job.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, we live in the country that has a two-party system when we're not supposed to. It's really anybody who wants to create a party can, but the way the system has, I don't even know, I guess, gone for the last couple hundred years, we've emerged with two parties, two powerful parties, and like a couple of smaller ones that have no real power, except to draw votes away from, typically from the, well, I guess both. It depends on who you're voting for. Like Green Party tends to draw from both sides.
Yeah,
but
isn't, I don't know.
It's just crazy.
It's just so crazy. I feel like we're making a mistake. Everybody's making a mistake by putting us all into categories and putting us all into teams. And you know, we're on this team and fuck that team. Shouldn't we more concentrate on just individualism, like kind of like an individual freedom, like, you know, and then we just like concentrate on that
kind of principle.
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean,
personal freedom.
That's what I kind of dig about the libertarian aspect of that politics, is like kind of like, I can do whatever I want. I'll let you do whatever you want. As long as you're not infringing on my rights, we're cool. We're copacetic, man.
Yeah.
Like, I can appreciate that.
No,
kind of thinking.
I used to call myself kind of libertarian, kind of. The only issue I ever had with that is that Ted Nugent is a libertarian, and that guy's fucking crazy. And like, but
again,
you like,
there's a problem with labels. It's like now he's in the libertarian.
It's too simple of a label because there are too many versions of libertarianism. Just like there are different types of Republicans and Democrats. That's again a two-party system. You like, there's 330 some odd million people in this country. I think.
Yeah.
I can't believe that they're well represented by two parties, two individual groups representing all those people. It doesn't make any sense.
I wonder, again, that's why I'm kind of bringing back into the psychology of it all. Like, through the ages, you know, we've had the two-party system. We've settled on it for, 100 years? More than that?
I think a little more, maybe. I'm not the best history buff, to be honest.
So, is it like, kind of like, is it, I don't know, it almost seems like it's a biological evolutionary thing that we're like, okay, let's make just shit simple. You're on team A and we're on team B, and then that's it.
Yeah. I think there is something to that. I mean, like, labeling is definitely something that we kind of come to naturally in society. There's need for it sometimes, you know, like in our society, we have government that's designed to help people of certain needs, and you have to be labeled to get those services, you know, like people with disabilities,
right?
Or, you know, like no one wants to be labeled anything really, because labeling kind of sucks. It's divisive to label people, but then how do you organize large systems without any kind of labels? It's really hard to.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine a system where it's possible to have no labels whatsoever, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's almost as simple as, you know, boy, girl.
Yeah, well, that's
I mean,
that's a whole other conversation too now.
That's a whole other thing. But generally speaking, the human race is boy,
binary,
girl. You know, binary. You know, it's, generally speaking, of course, there are variants in between that.
Yeah,
and then we're obviously having huge fights about that right now.
Yeah,
you know? and that's a whole different conversation that I think we need to get into. But
no, I'm not. I don't know enough about that conversation to have an opinion that's valid, you know.
Well, it's complicated. It's really complicated.
I mean, I do have an opinion, but my opinion is that my opinion doesn't fucking matter, and I'm not going to stop anyone from being who they want to be.
Right, exactly.
Or who they are.
Right.
You know, if someone's like, hey, my name is Abraham. Yeah, cool, your name's Abraham. I don't care if you have a dick or a vagina. You know, like,
right.
I'm going to call you, oh, you want me to call you he. Okay. Like, it doesn't affect me.
Right.
You know, and I don't see how so many people are upset about it if they're actually affected by it. That's my whole thing.
Yeah.
Does it really affect you?
No. I mean, it gets a little complicated when we're asking the government to, you know, sort of, you know, when we start asking the government, hey, if someone doesn't call me by a specific something.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
You know, and it gets a little complicated because then that gives a certain level of power to somebody who, let's say you run into somebody in the grocery store accidentally and you go, excuse me, sir, and that person gets really offended, and then it becomes an issue.
We're too easily offended. Like, I don't mean myself personally, because I'm actually quite hard to offend. And I don't know, I can't say it's generational. I think that the boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, I consider myself an Xennial because I'm like between Gen X and like, I'm in that weird pocket of like, not quite a millennial, but almost kind of a millennial.
Yeah.
And they all have the same shit, you know? Like, I can't quite get my mind to where I want it to go right now.
Well, I think what you're saying is, like, we've been having this kind of conversation, like these arguments for years.
The 45-year-old is just as offended by things as a 20-year-old is offended by things.
Right, they're just offended by different things.
Everyone's offended at different ages for different things, or the same thing. Mm-hmm. You know, you got... I can only imagine, like, it's not just... Well, we have this, like, mental kind of image of the angry, like, Christian, right?
Yeah.
And it's, like, it's our parents' age and older, you know? But I'm sure there are 20-somethings that are in that group that consider themselves, you know...
Well, that was the whole conversation in the 90s and in the late 90s, you know, in the early 2000s when George Bush was in office, and it was like he was, you know, him and Reagan. Was it Reagan? That courted the Christian right?
Yeah.
You know, and then that's how they got the South, and then, you know, they just kind of played the Christian kind of game, and that was kind of the conversation. And what's crazy is this conversation about free speech that people are having now, and it's like the left are intolerant on certain levels of free speech now, and 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it was the right. Mm-hmm. It was the Republicans in trying to implement blaspheme laws, saying you can't, you know, say these bad things about my religion or my religious beliefs and stuff like that. And and it's so crazy how it kind of flipped.
Yeah,
you know,
it really did. I mean, even thinking about historically, the South was Democratic.
Yeah,
before civil rights and all that stuff.
And wasn't the Democrats weren't they kind of responsible for the KKK, or didn't they back in the day? Because I believe I remember reading that the first Black Republicans, first African American people who got into office were in fact Republicans. if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Which is fucking that's so crazy if you think about like, wow, that history is just so fucking weird, man.
It really is.
And well, we kind of went on free speech. I wanted to ask you about the Nazi Pug.
I thought that was funny. Like you posted about that. It was like a week or two ago, or whatever.
And we kind of had that conversation.
And man, like there was some really funny comments were made.
So for those,
I think it's okay. Yeah,
let's say the Nazi Pug. So in Scotland, a relatively unknown YouTuber taught his girlfriend's pug to Sieg Heil by saying "gas the Jews," which is, of course, in very poor taste. But if you watch the video, okay, so he releases this satirical video.
He says
in the beginning
what it
of the
is,
video. In the beginning of the video, he says, "I'm not racist. I just did this to piss off my girlfriend." Yeah. And he shows the video, and it's the video like Sieg Heiling.
I mean, it's just a pug lifting his little arm, like his little leg up,
Yeah.
Like it's funny.
And Howard is...
It's in bad taste. I am a Jew, so I have license to say that it's funny and not be an asshole. Well, I guess I could be an asshole.
But he actually got arrested for that video. He got arrested, and it was...
Didn't he get tried already?
Yeah, he got tried,
and he was found guilty.
He was found guilty for a hate crime because
That's ridiculous.
of a satirical video.
What a waste of government resources.
And people are like, well, it's different country, different laws. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's like we're kind of more globalistic as we go along. And I have heard these conversations about broadening hate speech laws. And so I'm like, let's kind of be careful with messing around with free speech here, because if we continue to do that, I mean, Duncan Trussell, you know who Duncan Trussell is?
Yeah.
He said something brilliant. And
he does that.
He was having a conversation with, I believe, Jordan Peterson, and let's see what it says here. I'm trying to find it. I don't know. He basically said we have to be careful with actually legislating these laws. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but because they kind of stack on top of each other and creating this sort of spider web that anybody can get lumped into, including a person that isn't a Nazi, is just doing it for shits and giggles, being a comedian. And that's
it's really sad.
And I love comedy. That's why, I'm kind of a free speech absolutist here, because like George Carlin, he's like a god to me. I fucking love everything George Carlin. He was brilliant. He was hilarious, and he had something to say. Yeah,
he did. He was ahead of his time.
Through comedy, and I can only imagine like what he would have to say when it comes to this kind of conversation.
Yeah. Well, the sad thing is that there's probably stuff that he has said that's recorded that still pertains to things happening. It's like Bill Hicks. Yeah. Listen to his records, especially during the Bush years. If you listen to any of his stuff, he's talking about, H.W. Bush, but it still applies like in a way that's almost scary, because we're at war in the Middle East in both Bush presidencies. And it's talking about, Saddam Hussein and Bush, and you're like, is he talking about now? But he's dead, and he's been dead. Yeah, this is really weird. So I imagine there's probably a good amount of crossover and stuff that Carlin said in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that still holds true. And that's the truth in comedy. It's not just telling your own personal truth. Sometimes it's just the truth.
Yeah, and what's funny about this specific situation, the Nazi Pug, I was reading this article in Quillette. It says, in 1941, the German embassy in Helsinki interrogated a Finnish man accused of training his dog to raise its paw in response to the word Hitler. This act was considered disrespectful to the Third Reich, but fortunately for him, no witnesses were prepared to come forward, and the prosecution was dropped. A Scottish court has now succeeded where the Nazis, on this count anyway, failed. I was like,
that's
damn.
Incredible. That's savage right there.
Shit, man. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
That was good. It kind of makes me sad for that guy. I'm just like, shit,
Yeah,
man.
What's his sentence? Has he been sentenced?
He hasn't.
Or?
He's being sentenced in April. So
no idea how bad it's going to be yet. I mean, it's just ridiculous to think about. Like, when I hear about this story or this dude in the situation, I can't help but think about how it compares to kind of the popular notions of like Muslim majority countries, like Saudi Arabia or Iran, like anywhere where like we have this, whether it's true or not, idea about their tyrannical ways of dealing with, anything they don't like.
right.
Blasphemy is like a huge thing in Islam, in a lot of religions, but like they're pretty big religion. They're kind of on the forefront of conversation these days.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Harris kind of goes into it, balls deep in that whole thing. Gets him into trouble a lot.
Yeah,
but there are some points he's bringing up, some points that and he's had conversations with true Muslim reformers too, which are great conversations to listen to. And or Islamic reformers. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be offensive. Like these are very charged subjects.
Intent versus consequence.
Right.
Like I don't mean to offend somebody, but they're offended anyway.
Yeah.
Who's at fault?
Yeah.
Me or the person who's offended.
Yeah, and on the subject of hate speech, I was actually reading about it. It's like, man, like I think I was just reading about. I was actually was it reading? No, I was listening to a lecture. It was a panel. It was a kind of debate panel on free speech and the importance of it. And I read this when I was getting into that whole thing. It says, it seems counterintuitive. I don't know where I got this from. Oh, this is from Thought Catalog. It seems counterintuitive, but the answer to combating hateful speech is to listen, then debate. Not silence and drive underground, because what we've seen in the past is that when you silence/censor and drive underground, you let those ideas fester and become stronger, consequently turning into resentment, then eventually violence. For example, and this is from Thought Catalog. That was actually my writing. I actually wrote that. This is from Thought Catalog. In the 1920s, the National Socialist German Workers' Party was banned by the government of Weimar Germany. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, the Nazis were prosecuted numerous times for quote-unquote hate speech. Rather than hinder the Nazis, this merely helped them in every way imaginable. Through the courts, the Nazis were given a platform to spread their views to a far wider section of the public than they otherwise would have had access to. Through their prosecutions, they were able to cultivate an image of themselves as martyrs and political prisoners, drawing people to their side in droves.
Yeah, I get that. I mean...
So here comes Hitler, and Hitler's charismatic, and he's like, oh, I know what to do.
I'm Hitler.
I know what to do.
It's the Jews. Yep.
It's like these are conversations that you don't really hear in school. You're always like, Hitler's bad. We're like, okay, Hitler's bad. How did Hitler become so bad? And we also forget that he was elected. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like he just killed everybody and just became powerful. Not like, Alexander the Great or anything like that. He was elected. People wanted that sort of person.
Yeah. Well, the whole Nazi party is pretty fascinating history as far as their rise to power goes, and, the rise of fascism and all that jazz. It could never happen again. But yeah, it totally could. And people think it's happening right now. It could be. I don't think that's what's going to happen in this country. I'd like to think that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
But I also didn't think Trump was going to get elected. And
there was another...
I was wrong there.
Yeah, there was another great panel, because after he got elected, I was like, what?
Yeah, I mean, wow. We all were.
How did this happen? Because everyone was like, Hillary's a shoo-in. Mm-hmm. And then he wins landslide electoral college, of course.
Not actually,
but
according to him,
landslide. But to the electoral college, he got a lot more points.
She did, but it wasn't a landslide.
Okay.
Let's not argue semantics
of
the outdated electoral college.
Apples and oranges. But she did win the popular vote.
She did.
Yeah.
Which doesn't matter in this country.
Which is stupid. It's so ridiculous. I guess I can understand.
It makes sense. You can argue both sides of it, and it makes sense.
But
it was designed to stop a populist from becoming the president, and that's exactly what happened. So
Right.
it's like, no, it doesn't work the way it was intended to anymore.
Yeah. So what was? Oh yeah. So I was fascinated by like, how can this guy, literally a month prior to his election, got caught saying "grab her by the pussy"? Like, how is this possible? And there's a lot of panels on YouTube with, you know, all these really great intellectual professors, and they talk about, you know, one of them was, did PC culture help Trump win in the office? And these were all left-leaning professors, and every single one of them said yes. You know, Steven Pinker being one of them. He's pretty far left. You know, he's friends with Noam Chomsky, and you know, it's like he actually got in trouble for the things that he had said. He was just stating facts, and people jumped on him, called him. People don't
like facts anymore.
Well, yeah, but people called him alt-right, and I was like, whoa,
like, you clearly don't know who you're talking about.
He's just, you know. He got in trouble for saying capitalism is better than socialism. He said there are biological differences between men and women. I think that's what he said. And he said a few other things. And then he got in trouble. I'm like, how did he, you know, he was on a panel and he was speaking his mind. That's what I'm like.
Yeah.
This is
that's
such
dangerous now.
It's dangerous to speak your mind. But it's like the Dave Rubin, his show. I don't know if he coined this or some of his guests coined it, but it's called the Intellectual Dark Web.
That's pretty great.
It's pretty awesome. Where it's just intellectuals can just talk about whatever and not be afraid of the consequences of talking.
It's sad that we need that.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, well, before you were talking about the idea of, it used to be like, state your idea, so you know, here's your argument, and then listen to what the other person has to say, and like counter, like a back and forth, which doesn't happen anymore.
No.
And then it reminds me, like, when the Evergreen State College thing was happening.
Yes.
How, I mean, that was crazy.
That was nuts.
First of all,
I'd never seen anything like that.
My mind is still kind of blown by what happened there, and I'm like, is this real, or is this like reality television? Because it seems so unbelievable. But you have these college kids who think they're adults. Sorry, they're not. I thought I was an adult at 18 or 19, and guess what? I wasn't. I was a little douchebag with like legal adulthood, you know?
You could go to the army.
Yeah, I could fuck some shit up and go to prison. And I could, there's a lot of, my mind was always blown. I'm like, if I go rob a bank right now, it's going to say, you know, well, now it'd be like, 37-year-old man robs bank. And I'm like, okay, well, when I was like 23, I was like, 23-year-old man robs bank, and I'm like, fuck, really? I could be summed up to just man, my age and man. And, you know, it's kind of mind-blowing to me still, you know, that I can be just dumbed down to those two little characteristics. But anyhow, when you're in college, it's a great time to like learn how to be an adult, or who you are, or start learning who you are. Be
confronted by opposite views.
Emerging adulthood and all, like, you're not really done for a few years. Your brain's not done for at least another... Well, if you're 18, you got at least until 25 till your brain's done developing.
Oh, yeah. Which is
longer now. They think 27, 28 is more accurate. Depends on who you ask and what studies you're reading. But, you know, these kids, they have loud voices. But as soon as the opposition is like, as soon as it's time to let someone else speak, they just shut them down. Like, anything comes out of, what was the teacher's name? I bet you remember.
Brett Weinstein.
Yeah. You know, as soon as he would say anything, they would just scream racist or whatever. And like, not allowing him to have an argument, to have a word, to say anything, and just cutting him down as little stereotypes that don't really actually make sense. Like, if you read the emails he sent, if you read what he said, it's a really well thought out argument. Yeah. Like, he was basically, his whole thing was like, white people don't need this. This is how we live every day. There's a reason why we've been doing it this way for years.
Well,
he
said that there was a difference. There's a ideological, not ideological, but there's a really big difference between asking a group of people to not come, or asking a group of people to abstain from coming to school, and forcing somebody to not come to school. And that was essentially his argument. Yeah. You know?
Fair enough.
And I'm like, that makes a lot of fucking sense.
It does.
I mean, and he said, like, this is in fact pretty racist if we really get down to the nitty gritty of all this. Yeah. And he got...
Was it the Day of Inclusion or something?
It was the Day of Inclusion, which they've practiced for years.
Yeah.
And
which I thought was a cool idea.
It's a great idea because it's about the play. I forget what the play is called, but it's essentially a village. All the African Americans decide not to come to work, and it shows the village like how important,
right,
they are to the sustainability of the town,
right.
And it's a really important play, and by all means, they should do that.
I think it's called Fiddler on the Roof.
It's called Peter Pan.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool idea, and I think his his message was really smart, well thought out, and this guy, he's really smart.
Yeah.
Like when you hear him speak, it's like he's a professor, and you're like, oh, this dude is educated.
Yeah, knows his shit.
And it didn't matter that he was educated, because his message got boiled down to a talking point that wasn't even accurate.
Right.
And that's kind of what happens all the time now.
Well, it's mob mentality.
It is.
It's so addictive, and it's also, we want to find a boogeyman, because I want a boogie. We want to find a person because it's easier for us to attack. We don't want to see a person as being a human being, because then they're like us. It's like the school shooters, or it's like a serial killer, or anybody who does horrible, horrific things. We don't want to think of them as human.
Right.
It's easier for us to turn them into a monster. I would never do anything like that in a million years.
Well, that's true for most people.
That's true for most people, but
not for
sometimes someone is born with, either medical issues, or they just hate the world, and they want to show the world that... I'm going to take as many people out to show everybody what it means to be miserable. Yeah,
I think about that mentality, or like the mindset you have to be in to be a mass shooter. Obviously, as someone who's interested in psychology, I'm like, what is that like? What is going on in his head? Like the Parkland shooter, like the fact that he is alive, first of all, is mind blowing to me, because usually 99% of the time the shooter kills himself or is killed in the process, and you don't get any answers from them directly, which makes me wonder if maybe he doesn't have any, like, I don't know, it's a very hard thing to like get inside the mind of. And it's funny, like I'm reading Jordan Peterson's book 12 Rules for Life, and in chapter 6 yesterday or the day before. In chapter 6, he talks about the mindset of a person that is going to be a school shooter or is going to kill as many people as possible. There is a particular mindset, and he cites this book called Panzram, and it's like an autobiography of like one of the most sadistic killers of our time. And he goes into it, and you have to understand, like, this person wants to burn God. This guy it's basically Cain and Abel. It's like Cain sees Abel. Abel has everything in the world, and I know you're Jewish, but that's a Jewish story.
It's a Jewish, so that's why I'm talking about it. So like, Cain sees Abel and he's jealous, and that jealousy turns into resentment, and that resentment turns into violence, rage. It's the same fucking thing. Yeah. That there are these people out here that just can't get a leg up for whatever reason, and then they don't blame themselves at all. They turn everything else out onto the world. There's no responsibility. There's no self-reflection. There's just like, I'm perfect and they're all wrong. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can kind of get into that, but I mean, like, what's the difference between, the kid who has those same issues and doesn't shoot up the school versus the kid that does? Well, I think it's besides the access to like weapons and stuff. Well, I think it's probably part of that. I think personally, I think it's either hope that things will get better, or it's a certain level of self-reflection of maybe I need to change myself. Like, I think there's a certain there's a little tiny bit of hope in a person's mind where, like, okay, I can't do that. I can't kill somebody. Right. I have to either get out of here, go to a different school, maybe be homeschooled, do something else, join
like they feel like they have some kind of mechanism of action that could help them.
Right.
Like maybe it'll get better, or I have some control in the situation.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like those shooters part of that is coming out of a feeling of like, this is the only control I have.
Yeah.
This is the only way I can change anything, is to do this incredibly irreversible and painful thing to everybody else. To me, it's just the thing, you know? And that's why I'm kind of fascinated by it. And like, you know, it's predominantly like teenage white males. And then you throw in the Vegas shooter and like, how does he fit into that? Like, I don't know. I mean, that's your hometown.
Which is so strange. We don't hear shit about that story.
Well, that's the 24-hour news cycle that happened a few months ago. Yeah, unless there's some new information, we're not going to hear about it again for a while.
Right. It's but I'm incredibly fascinated by what makes a person do that. And then now there's this recent push of like, don't bully. Which is like, yeah, I mean, I get that.
Sure.
But, you know, humans, basically every single animal in the animal kingdom has some sort of hierarchy and pecking order.
We have been listening to Jordan Peterson.
Well, no, I mean, it's like it makes sense.
It does,
you know, because
it's true.
It is true. You know, it's like you look at a group of kids and they're so fucking mean to each other.
Yeah.
You're like, why? There's no reason. There is a reason. It's like an evolutionary thing that we've dealt with. It's like who's going to be the top dog around here?
Yeah.
I'm going to be the top dog. You're I'm the alpha male. I'm the alpha in this pack.
Sure. Even though that's
you know, it's not just males. it's women too. It's like,
yeah,
you know,
social structures that exist for reasons that we don't need anymore, realistically.
Right.
This is probably something I've said a million times in some iteration or some way, is that like, you know, we're in a modern society, a modern civilization, but we still have like all these features of evolutionary adaptation that don't actually serve us well anymore.
Right.
Like, and you can go in like a bunch of directions, not even just psychological, but like physical.
Yeah.
You know, like our food culture is fucking horrifying.
I know.
You know,
it's so terrible.
Like, it's terrible. Yeah. I mean, it's really.
I mean, McDonald's is right down the street, and I'm kind of hungry.
Yeah. And it's cheap.
Yeah.
But so there's all these things that we haven't actually adapted to modernity very well.
Yeah.
You know, we did a good job building civilization. Like, there's a shitload of people on the planet, and we figured out how to live together, which I think that's also has to do with evolution. And, you know, we're social animals. We need groups. We need people.
Somewhere along the line, we were like, hey, let's put down the spears. Let's trade. How about that?
Yeah.
I give you this. You give me that. Okay.
Yeah. That's actually exactly how it went down the first time. Some guy chiseled it into a rock. It looks like a Far Side comic.
But it is crazy how we kind of, regardless of all of our terrible features of the human is capable of,
most of us get along great.
Most of us get along great.
Yeah.
Most of us just like, hey, what's up, George? Hey, what's up, John? And they just go about their day.
The Beatles are doing just fine.
We're doing
okay.
Sorry,
I had to go there since you chose the two Beatle names.
I know. What about me, guys? Shut up, Ringo.
Well, I'm going to go play the drums now. Something about a yellow submarine.
Something about a yellow tambourine or something.
Bill Hicks again.
God, gotta love Bill Hicks.
Yeah. That was a good tangent, I gotta say. Yeah, from the hopeless despair of mass shooters to, we're the Beatles.
We're the Beatles.
Yeah.
I mean, but you know, like, again, I think perspective is so important when we're talking about terrible things. You know, and again, you go to Steven Pinker and you just listen to him talk. You know, he has a book called Enlightenment Now. He has a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature.
I've heard of that one.
Which is, I haven't read it yet, but I've heard that it's really good. Just goes down all these like really optimistic graphs. Like starvation is nearly, I think, if I remember correctly, I think it's starvation is like almost gone. And like in the next 30 years, no one will be starving anymore. If it continues to go.
Thanks, Obama.
But hey, At least no one's fucking starving.
Yeah.
There's
well,
that.
Statistically, starvation is like almost non-existent, but still plenty of people.
Still plenty of people.
People
because,
starve in our country.
Of course, that's
starving Marvin.
Of course. Let's see. I'm looking up. I'm looking up some of his things right now. Genocide and other mass killings have gone down. War deaths have gone down considerably since the early
since World War II.
World War II. Rape and sexual assault and violence have continued to go down, even though it's a big thing right now, and it's definitely should be talked about for sure, because we want to eradicate it completely.
Yeah.
Which is a great goal to have.
Impossible, probably.
But it's good to know that you can still walk outside without the fear of
Oh man, I
groped.
I feel very lucky to have been born a white male in America for a lot of reasons, but the biggest one is because being a woman seems so hard.
Yeah.
I've never been afraid of walking down the street. I've never been sexually afraid in any way of another human being.
Yeah, man.
That's kind of a mind fuck to imagine what that's like.
And
they deal with that every day.
Every day.
Yeah. I think I've hit on a woman like 3 times in my life. Because I think it's so creepy to be that forwardly aggressive towards somebody. I'm not saying I've never complimented a girl or obviously I've dated and
there's no right way to do it, but
I feel so sensitive to the idea of making someone uncomfortable,
right,
in that way that I just don't do it.
And even that lack of confidence would show that you're would show, and you'd be like, excuse me, can I, and then she'd be like, ew, get away.
Yeah.
You creep.
Yeah.
Weirdo.
Yeah.
There's no right way to do it.
No, some dudes are really good at it, and I'm like, I gotta imagine that part of it's a numbers thing, right? If you hit on 99 women or 100 women, one out of them is gonna say yes, right? Okay. How many of those other women are really creeped out or offended or maybe felt harassed?
Right.
It's got to be a relatively noticeable percentage. Because dudes are really good at making women uncomfortable.
Yeah. They don't even have to say anything. They can just look at them.
Be there. Yeah. There's a weird guy in the room. Because Stephanie, this guy he's got a weird mustache. I don't like him.
That's my dad.
Oh. Shit. Hi.
But
it's true. I don't have to worry about that.
Generally speaking.
Yeah. Not yet. Anyway.
I'm sure if you were someone like Andy Dick, and you'd have some semblance of being worried.
That's very specific, though.
That's a very specific human being.
Not a general anxiety I walk around with every day, and it's. Women are amazing. I'm a big fan,
Yeah.
And not just because I like to have sex with them, but because I think they're fascinating.
Well, we all had mothers, and most of our mother.
We all had a mother.
We all had a mother, and hopefully most of us had good mothers, and were loving and caring.
Yeah.
Taught us to treat women with respect.
Are we turning this into a Howard therapy session now?
Yes, we did, or a Dr. Phil session. What you need to do is stop looking at women in a creepy way.
I actually can imagine he's probably said that on television.
It's so funny that in the beginning of the show it says Dr. Phil is not an accredited psychologist or psychiatrist, and yet we still love the show,
and we still call him Dr. Phil. And I guess he's not a doctor. I've never thought about it. And yeah, him and Oprah, they love each other. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, they do. Wasn't that crazy when everyone was like, Oprah's going to be our next president? I was like, please God, no. Come on, man. I mean, I love Oprah. I think she has some great points about being good to people. No, she's a great person. Yeah. I was never really a big fan of her show, or I don't know. I just don't love Oprah. I get the draw, I guess. I never felt it. Speak your truth, Howard. This is my truth. I've been hiding. This is, I think Oprah's overrated. Oh, no. Shots fired. I mean, I think she's from Nashville. I think that's really cool. I didn't know that. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with Oprah. I'm like, there's no negative side to this. I'm just like, It's like Titanic. Everyone was like, Titanic's such a great movie.
Well, it's like anything.
I was like, yeah, it was good, I guess. Yeah,
It's like,
cool, sure.
yeah.
He died at the end. She could have just scooted over and they could have shared that door or whatever she was on. But yeah, cool. If you loved it, cool, good for you. Everybody gets a new whatever.
Well, it's like anything. It's like if someone's pushing something in your face and that's all they talk about, or that's all you see, I'm like, God, I'm fucking sick of this.
Yeah.
Just like, no matter what it is, it could be like, hey, be a good person. Be a good person. Be a good person.
Well, now I don't want to.
Now I don't want to be a good person. It's the same as like your parents telling you not to smoke cigarettes or don't drink.
Oh man, I got in trouble many times for smoking.
But it's because your parents told you not to do it.
Partly.
Psychological Freudianism.
There's a whole lot of reasons probably why I was a smoker when I was a young teenager. I mean, yeah, there is a psychology to that. And, peer pressure. And like, smoking looks so cool. I smoked off and on through most of my adult life. I think I quit years ago. I don't even know when. 2013, maybe? 2013 was probably the last time I really had like more than a cigarette.
Yeah.
Like I might have had a cigarette like when I was drunk at some point since then. Maybe. But now I think it's disgusing.
Right.
Like I can't stand to be around it very much.
Here's a question I have for you, and this is a marketing question. I'm watching me and Asher, she's rewatching
Mad Men?
But I've never watched it.
Look, oh my God, that's so weird. Eliza had never seen it, and I've been saying for a while, like, we should watch this show. I love this show. It's so good. We finally started watching it, and we're like binge watching, which, we're parents, so for us, that's like 2 episodes a day.
Right.
Which is actually a great pace for a show that's that good. Mm-hmm. How far are you guys? We're season 5 now.
We're season 4. Season 4, episode 11.
Oh, so you're almost there.
And
what do you want to hear?
Great show.
I say that all the time now. It's so good.
It's so good. But it got me on this question of like, what is it? What comes first? It's like a chicken or the egg situation. It's like, is it the marketing that comes first and we like, ooh, or is it something that we subconsciously want and the marketer basically brings that forth in us?
I mean, I think that depends on the product.
You think?
Like, one of the things I like about that show is they talk about psychology and they have like psych research on the products, which is, I'm guessing, pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to sell something, you want to know why someone would even want it.
Yeah.
And like the demographics of who would buy such a product. Yeah. The Negroes really love I can't remember the name of the damn TV. There's a episode of Mad Men with there's a TV company and they don't want to advertise specifically to the African American market,
right?
Because
the 60s,
1963 racism is still a big thing.
Yeah.
Which that's one of the things I love about that show, actually.
Yeah, they do a really good job.
Show the sexism and the racism, the classism. That's all really, really good. And then I fucking love Don Draper.
Yeah, I mean, but you know what's funny? Like, okay, so we can get on at the show, but like, that's one of those shows that brings so much nuance to a situation. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, basically, you can watch that show and go, all of these men are sexist pigs and they are terrible people, period. But then you continue to watch the show and you're like, oh, I'm kind of rooting for Donald Draper now. Yeah. Oh, I'm kind of rooting for Pete now. Oh, I'm kind of rooting for the sexual predators of sorts, I'm like, what?
Because they stopped being, a 1 or 2 dimensional idea as a character and they actually become real to us. Like, okay, so when we started watching the show, a couple episodes in and, sorry to spoiler alert if you haven't watched it yet. It's been around for fucking ever now. It's your fault. Pete Campbell is such a prick. He's so hateable, like just detestable. Really, through at least the entirety of season 1 and most of season 2. And I remember saying to Eliza, probably in the second episode, maybe even in the first one, I was like, it's weird. It's like, I actually really like Pete, but you'll see why.
Yeah.
And she was like, what? You like Pete Campbell?
Yeah.
And she gets it now. We're like 5 seasons in. And he's imperfect and he's a little rapey. Let's be honest.
Well, they all are.
They all are.
Little rapey.
Harry Crane. Come on, dude. The least rapey guy on the show is a closeted homosexual. And even he talks a good game. But yeah, you fall in love with these characters because of their flaws, because of their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I love fiction. I love entertainment because you get to glimpse into, when it's good, you get to actually see inside a representation of something that's very real and very hidden from most people. Like,
right.
You know, you walk down the street, you see a guy, oh, that's a guy, and goes the other direction. You never think of anything more of him. But he has an entire, like, interior life, you know? He has a mind and thoughts and
opinions. And,
he is a person, and and most people are like whole people. Some people aren't, you know, for whatever reason. And it's just lost on us most of the time. Yeah,
and it made me think of when I'm watching all these shows like Breaking Bad, where, you know, by all accounts you can see Walter White as a terrible person.
He is. But he's an anti-hero. We love him.
Right, and the same thing goes with Sopranos, which I've never watched, but that was the first.
Whoa. Break. Reset. You gotta, dude. I think I've had this conversation with you before. You know, you gotta watch The Sopranos.
It kind of ruined it for me because everyone started talking about the ending. I'm like, okay, well,
it doesn't matter though. And I know I've told you that exact sentence. It doesn't matter. Right. You know how it ends. It doesn't matter because it's not about the ending.
Right. But what I'm saying is, you know, we love nuanced shows now. Every single big hit show has these nuances in them where we have anti-heroes and we have characters that by all accounts are terrible people.
Mm-hmm. And we still
love them.
Yeah.
But we love to, again, going into, you know, whatever cultural politics, whatever, we love to paint those people as the other. No, we don't see that person as a human being. We see them as bad, period. You know, it's like, and I'm pulling this from Duncan Trussell again, looking at Jeff Sessions. All we see about Jeff Sessions is everything bad. Everything is terrible. He hates marijuana, but you know what? He might have done some pretty good things in his life. There might be some nuance to that individual because he is a person.
I bet he's a nice guy.
He's a human being. He has things of... I'm not defending his positions by any means.
No, because they're not defendable.
They're not defendable, period. But as a person who has thoughts and feelings, and, you know, he has an idea of what a good world should be. You know, and it's like, I don't agree with it.
His idea of a good world, yeah.
Yeah, but then it's like you can empathize, or sympathize with that.
I can't empathize with Jeff. I'm probably the most empathetic person. I don't know. I'm sure there are more empathetic people than me, but I'm very empathetic to the point where I like try to turn it off sometimes. And yeah, I can't empathize with that.
Yeah.
Part of that's just because he's intangible. He might as well be a picture on the wall.
Right.
You know, he's a concept more than he is a person to me.
Right.
But I can sympathize. I'm like, yeah, he's a person, and it's gotta suck having your name dragged through the political mud so often. Yeah. But that's what he signed up for,
right?
So I can't be that compassionate in the long run for a guy who's like willingly putting himself in a position to be lambasted.
Correct.
So I don't know. Fuck you, Jeff Sessions, but also I hope you have a good life.
There you go. You know, it's like kind of like the Zen Buddhist way of looking at life, you know?
Duality. Fuck you, but also I love you.
Yeah. I just, you know, it's, again, I'm able to have these kind of thoughts because I'm older now. And critical thinking, I think, is lost on a lot of people, especially when it comes down to politics. Everything is so charged. And ever since Trump got elected, everyone's like...
It's awful.
It's just kind of... everyone has just gone crazy. It's like anything that Trump is associated with, even like every sort of conservative value you can think of, if he agrees with it, that value is fucked. By all means,
yeah.
You know? It's like, and that kind of sucks because I can look at a conservative value, I can look at... I don't know, I can listen to a person like Ben Shapiro and be like, okay, that actually kind of makes sense. I see where you're coming from on that. But it's associated with Donald Trump, so nobody on the left is going to listen.
Yeah.
Period. You know?
Yeah.
It's like...
I think... I don't know. Like, life is nuanced, but politics is not, you know, mainstream. Anything that reaches mainstream media is not going to be... It's going to be, you know,
watered
unidimensional.
Down.
Or, yeah, watered down is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
You know, and that sucks because life isn't actually like that.
I know.
You know?
But, you know, there is good news. I mean, more and more people are turning to alternative media.
True. I thought you were going to say, like, you could save 15% on your car insurance. Classic.
By switching to Geico.
Yeah. Not a sponsor.
I don't really watch CNN or
I see it on Facebook.
Yeah,
that's where I see it
on Facebook. I get my news on the Associated Press app and stuff like that to get the
I do Google News.
What happened? Okay, and then after that point, then people start talking about their opinions and start to see the facts. CNN and they kind of. The facts are they do a pretty good job with what happened. Okay, this event happened.
Yes.
Okay. Now for the opinion side of everything, that's where I feel people are starting to fall off from CNN and NBC and Fox News because there's a lack of substance there. Because they only have 5 minutes to have this really intense conversation.
Yep.
But you go to like YouTube, like I said before, it's like there's tons of like long 2-hour long debates with really fucking smart people.
Yeah.
And they're intellectual, they're not yelling at each other, they're having a discussion of the situation and politics and policy, and you actually get a better idea that way because you get better context. You have a full hour's worth or longer to see what a person is trying to convey. Yeah,
I think the problem maybe with that is what are people choosing to watch? Yes, more people are probably moving towards alternative news media or alternative everything because we don't have to I don't have to have Comcast television to watch TV anymore. I don't have cable.
Yeah.
I got Netflix and Hulu and HBO Go.
Yeah.
I have more personal choice in that matter. But who's going on YouTube and what are they watching? And most people just want to be entertained. I feel like in everything, whether it's informative like a news program or
but
watch something about race cars, whatever you're interested in. There's this great book called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. I read this actually in a college English class, which is it's a great book for understanding for what do you call it when you're reading comprehension and critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
But I loved the book because it's fucking amazing. And the first part of the book is him talking about the history of America and how smart people were. I think I've talked to you about this before, maybe. There's this, we tend to think people were dumb and illiterate, and actually, no, most people in this country were not illiterate because that was the only form of entertainment.
Yeah.
You did all your chores. You got all your stay alive work because that's what chores were in those days. You do this or you starve. Or freeze to death. And then at the end of the day, you light a few candles and read a book. Or, some people, it was read the Bible.
Right.
Especially people who didn't have a lot of money, but reading newspapers, staying in the know was all really about reading.
Thanks, Benjamin Franklin.
And so it's funny because in the first argument he makes in this book is the argument, this is an anti-TV kind of that's where he bases this book is the TV media is ruining culture, it's ruining everything.
Yeah.
And when the telegraph wire came out, and news could be relayed instantaneously across thousands of miles, people were like, this is going to ruin everything. It's the same argument. Every time something new comes along, there's going to be naysayers.
Right. Technology.
Technology, exactly. Yeah. It is what we're talking about. Okay, but specifically, what was mind-blowing to me in reading this book is... So a great example in the books is the Lincoln-Douglas debates before Lincoln was president. I guess he was a senator or whatever. Mm-hmm. U.S. history, folks. There were these very famous debates between Lincoln and Douglas, and I don't remember all the details, but I know that they were a whole day affair. People left to go home and have dinner and came back to the theater. No air conditioning in this day, and it's boiling heat. But these are the big political dudes of the time having really rigorous debates, and they're speaking in a way that is hard to comprehend when it's written to us now, not to people then. The language was really dense and really poetic, actually.
Yeah.
And they could listen to that and hear it and not think twice about it, because that's what they read every single day. And we can't do that now. People don't do that. We need everything.
We have emojis now.
Exactly. Don't get me wrong. I fucking love emojis.
We've gone back to hieroglyphics.
Yeah, pretty much. But they're effective. It's still communication can be very effective in that way. But the greater point being that we need to be entertained all the time. And that's kind of the point of the book, is that it used to be that you didn't need to be entertained to be taught anything. But now we expect to be entertained even in education.
Well, it's sort of like a muscle, you know. I think now don't quote me on this.
It's pronounced muscle.
Yeah, muscle. It was like a muscle, but they've had to use a lot more of the comprehension brain back then, because, like you said, there was no television, there wasn't
even radio.
There wasn't radio. There wasn't even comic books.
There was
words and imagination, and you're exercising that part of your brain just because you that was all you had. And with any other muscle, I bet you there's some graph out there that says we are weaker now than we were way back then, because we had to work. We had to work to survive physically. Yeah. You know, every single muscle, and now, you know, that part is weakened in today's society, and our brain is kind of weakened in today's society too. And so
I don't think it's weaker. I think it's different.
We're using it in different ways.
Yeah, we're using it. I think we're more inside our brains and inside our bodies than we are outside. We've moved inward.
Yeah,
you know. I mean, I think the rise of mental illness that's a big part of it. Our culture has moved. We're so heady, you know. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of an example.
It could be too. That could be. I mean, correlation doesn't mean causation, but you know, you could say the lack of physical, the dedication to work out and be physical is less now, and that might have something to do with our brains, you know, because having a good physical body, we're now getting more and more studies on the importance of gut bacteria and gut flora, and how that is actually connected to your brain in a lot of ways. And so we never knew that 50 years ago,
right? You know? We didn't know that 20 years ago.
We didn't know that 20 years ago. But then again,
we did, though. We did. I mean, to what extent did we understand, you know, gut bacteria 2 decades ago? But we're still figuring things out. And we move through the world like we know everything at this point. That's kind of the sense I get when I think about what it means to be alive in the 21st century. It's like, well, we just go to the doctor now when we're sick, and we have all these conveniences, and we've got it all figured out. Oh, hey, look, a new device. It makes things even easier. We're still just scrambling to figure things out all the time. And then we think we have something figured out, and we got maybe pretty close to it. And then we realize we've neglected this entire other portion, or we just didn't realize it was there, or we were wrong about it. And it redefines what we did know. Not entirely, but it's like, you know, reframing a photo is like, oh, it's so much better this way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, medical science is really, really young.
Yeah. I was just
150 years or so of modern, quote unquote, modern medical science.
Yeah. I was reading actually about how crazy it was that how chloroform and anesthesia were just becoming a thing. And I was reading on the first delivered pregnancy under chloroform, and how revolutionary that was, and how actually controversial it was too, because pain in childbirth was considered a religious aspect of, you know,
it still is.
It still is. Yeah. You know, some people, they want a natural birth, spiritual
reasons, or for being a human reasons.
But over time, women more and more were like, okay, I'm about to have my 7th kid. Okay, so I'm going to get the chloroform.
Yeah. There's that episode of Mad Men where Betty gives birth. Like, you're past that if you're in season 4.
Yes. Peggy.
What did I say?
Peggy. You said Betty.
Betty. No, when she has Jean.
Oh, Betty. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Betty.
Betty, Peggy.
Betty, Peggy. Yeah, and so on.
Trudy.
And she has the like dream labor. That's the term for it, but like because of the drug, she's like in dreamland.
Right.
And like that's really frowned upon now because it's really it's not healthy. It's not ideal. Also, like this is maybe crass, but that's how I roll. In the 50s, like you went in for to give birth, and they just shaved your pussy, shaved it all off, clean as a whistle. Wow. And now they're like, actually, natural pubic hair is the best way to be when you give birth, for reasons,
biological reasons.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. The hair in that area moves bacteria away from the body. But also we have hygiene now. So if we're talking about like every day, like, well, there's a girl we both know, and she like, this is way back when we worked at Hustler. She worked there too. And she didn't shave, and she was like, my doctor said like I shouldn't because it's better for hygiene because like the bacteria. And I was like, yeah, but also, that developed when there was no soap. Like there's no antiseptics for most of the existence of man. So yeah, you needed that hair. But now, do you shower daily? You shower regularly, not even daily.
Yeah.
You shower a few times a week. You just hot water down there. You're good. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But you can't argue with some people. And obviously, I don't care what she does with her pubic hair.
Yeah. And it's something else I didn't, we're going to get, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that tampons were invented by a man.
Of course they were.
I didn't know that.
Invent things at that time. Like they probably did actually. I don't know when the first recognized women inventor was, but women have been doing the same thing men have been doing forever.
They just have no recognition.
We just thank the men that were near them for doing it.
Right. Yeah. But I didn't know that I just always assumed it would happen in, the 60s and a woman, I just assumed this.
Yeah.
But it was a man in like the 50s or something, or 40s, I don't know.
I don't remember. I don't know the
that was kind of
tampon
crazy.
history that well. Yeah. It's really weird to think that there was a time where like all doctors were men, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, most everything was men.
Yeah. But I'm saying specifically, we're talking about doctors. So all gynecologists, all obstetricians were men, and there's a generation of women that think it's kind of weird to go to a woman gynecologist, and like it seems more natural to me.
Yeah.
Like I don't care when I go to the doctor what their sex, gender, whatever. I don't care if they do a good job, if they have good candor. I'm like, they're gonna touch my balls at some point. As long as they're professional, that's all I care about. But women, it's what the pelvic exam is invasive.
Yeah. They better get the right freaking doctor.
And being comfortable, I'm all for it. So a woman doing that seems much less.
I wonder now if there are more women gynecologists than there are men now.
There are.
I bet you there
Actually,
is.
I think there are more women doctors, period. Than men.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we get on this topic?
I don't know. We went into, I don't know, just doctors and stuff. Well, we got a little bit left. Let's end on a positive note. Well, maybe. I don't know. I'm going to ask you a question. Are you generally optimistic? Because you just had a baby. You just had a baby, and you look at him and his smile, and he smiles back at you, and eventually he's going to start talking, saying "Dada."
Yeah, he talks.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've ever described myself as just generally optimistic. I don't feel like it's in my nature. Maybe it's because I'm Jewish. It's a Jewish cultural thing to be like, maybe, I don't know. We'll see what happens. And, I think I'm cautiously optimistic, but I wouldn't call myself an optimistic person. I don't like to think of myself as a pessimist either. I guess I'm kind of a realist, but I'm also a dreamer. So what the fuck does that make me? I don't know. I hate to be defined in broad terms when everything is so situational and contextual.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's a huge problem.
I was just saying
society
generally.
Lack of context for everything is terrible.
Yeah.
So, if you're like, in X situation, would you be optimistic? Like, I could probably answer that question. But I don't know. I think most of the time I'm just kind of here.
Yeah. Just going through it.
Yeah. And having a kid definitely changes things. In ways you can't see coming, but he's an awesome little dude and he makes me laugh every day. It's an amazing thing to create a child. especially like perfectly healthy one. 'Cause
Yeah.
there's so much fear. For me, there was. I don't know if that's true of everybody, but I was just so worried and anxious. It's like I just really like when people are like, "What? Are you having a boy or girl?" Like, "Oh, we don't know. We as long as he's healthy, as long as it's healthy." Like, that's kind of how I actually felt. Like, I would have cared if it was a girl or a boy. I didn't care. I really just wanted to have, a healthy child. And it's not like, oh, we're done. Okay, cool. It's like, oh, well, okay, well, like he has his whole life ahead of him to have like health problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then you have to take care of him.
Yeah. Well, and especially like, so I have not a so common situation myself, like, and not just because I'm Jewish, although I did think of making that joke. But like,
how many Jew jokes can we do today?
All of them. I mean, being a Jew is a joke.
I'm Italian and I get confused to be Jewish, so I'm
Italians and Jews, they have that.
The nose,
crossover.
the bridge.
Yeah, it's the Roman nose.
I might as well. Maybe I should just convert. Do you think I should just convert?
What's the point? Convert and then denounce.
I want to wear the hat.
You can wear it if you want anyway.
Really? Is that a thing?
It's called a yarmulke or a kippah. Yeah, I know a lot about being a Jew because I am one. Ask away.
So you can just wear it even if you're not a Jew?
I mean, I don't see why not.
Isn't it funny? Like I could say not a Jew. Like even like it could sound bad.
The word Jew is just it's like it's always on the fence of being offensive. It's like which way do I fall this time? Not offensive. You fucking Jew, offensive. It's so dumb, but it's so true.
It's so true. You just anyway, sorry.
Yeah, derailed on that. Yeah, you could totally wear one. I'm not religious. I'm not, and even when I was never religious, but even when I was a kid and I would have been like, yeah, I'm Jewish, we're conservative Jews, which is kind of a misnomer because it sounds like something that it's not. And it's like, so there's like Orthodox, conservative, and Reform. Those are like the basic tenets of, definitions of levels of religiosity or spirituality outside of Israel, really, because it's a little different there. And conservative just means you're kind of in the middle. And some conservative Jews are like, we observe Shabbat and we keep kosher. And some conservative Jews, like my family, are like, we occasionally go to services Friday and Saturday, and we don't ever keep kosher, and we love bacon. And it's funny, my parents go to services, I think, almost every Friday night. I think it's a community thing. Yeah. That's the only thing, from my point of view, that is really, really beneficial of religion is community.
Yeah.
Otherwise, fuck it. Not a fan.
And I think meaning can be derived from religion too. If you look at Jesus.
Please don't.
I mean, just
okay,
saying.
let's look at Jesus.
If you just you don't have to be religious.
White Jesus.
Just look at the story.
We're talking about white Jesus.
Well, we're talking about whatever color Jesus you like. The guy Jesus. It's a pretty like tragic story. Like in essence, being like he's kind of the perfect guy. He just like he took all this horrible shit that was going on, and he just walked into it. And he's just like, all right, I'm dying for your all sins. Here we are.
That's if you believe that.
I mean, if you believe, I'm just saying.
I don't.
Regardless of the metaphysical aspect of all of it, it's just like the story, the storyline of it.
It's a good story, I guess.
And if you aspire to be a person that has Christ-like things, well, I don't object to that.
I don't either, but most Christians aren't Christ-like.
Well, we can...
That you could talk about that for the rest of your life.
Right. But if you aspire to be that, if you aspire to be like forgiveness and all that Christian stuff, it's like...
Christ was pretty socialist, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Christians tend not to be very socialist in this country.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've heard different arguments, but whatever. It's interesting. It's interesting. I think you can derive meaning out of stories like that.
Well, of course, and you can derive meaning out of anything. I have a hard time with the idea of deriving meaning out of something that somebody else created.
Yeah.
And I can't help but see religion as man-made.
But is it something that someone else created, or is it because all of those religious stories have basically duality, good versus evil, yin and yang,
Sure, some of them.
And if you really like look inside yourself, you can like say like, wow, I have good and evil inside me.
I definitely have good and evil
we
inside
all do. You know, it's a constant battle inside of ourselves.
Like, constantly like, dude, don't murder. Just
he pissed you off.
Don't
He's
kill
an
that
asshole.
dude. Just don't kill him.
Just
not because you don't want to, but because prison.
Because prison.
I mean, there's got to be someone out there that's their daily life.
Yeah.
Is that they want to, the psychopathic people. They
Right.
wanna hurt
I just
people.
think there is benefit to thinking that there's
something more.
Well, that there's something bigger than yourself, you know, and that you're doing these things for the good of something, the good of your family, the good of your your community, the good of, you know, you're trying to be a better person inside to kind of be an example.
But do you need religion for that?
Well, not necessarily religion, but every story is kind of religiously based. I mean, if you look at The Lion King, you look at Chronicles of Narnia, like you look at all of these stories, they kind of have the same kind of archetype, you know?
Yeah. Have you, Joseph Campbell?
Yes. Isn't he the guy that kind of took all the stories and...
The hero's journey, or whatever.
The hero's journey.
Yeah, like every Disney movie is based off of his writing,
or just every story.
The 12-point plot. Well, yeah, that's his whole thing. Is like there's all these myths, all these stories. They all have these things in common. He's a smart dude, fascinating read. But I mean, I like stories, but I don't really particularly like religion.
No, I know. Well, I think you're getting set on this whole like religion thing having a bad connotation, which it does, because many things have been, you know, happened in the name of God that were quite horrifying. Most things.
And continuing to be horrifying.
And continuing to be horrifying, yes. But, you know, like, also good things happen because of religion too, you know.
And bad things happen outside of religion,
you know, Martin Luther King, if it wasn't for, you know, his belief in God, you know, the civil rights wouldn't have passed, because he believed so much. He believed in a higher power, you know.
But damn it! I keep knocking the camera. I'm just so fidgety. I'm fidgety. Yeah. But I mean, the argument could always be made: if it wasn't Martin Luther King, it would have been somebody else.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. But
so
I mean, you can, but it wasn't. It was.
No,
Martin
you're
Luther
right. It was obviously that's how it actually happened. But I mean, it's the argument between correlation and causation.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like, do we ascribe good things and bad things to religion? And I don't know. I can't quite figure out the words I want to use here. But I mean, basically, I don't think it's a necessity. I think we could easily move past. I'm not saying there's no God. I call myself an atheist because it's a shortcut. Mm-hmm. But I'm more of an atheist, I think most atheists are atheists. They don't believe in God.
Right.
They don't believe in a God.
Mm-hmm.
But theism is belief. A belief. Saying you're theistic means you believe in a belief structure.
Yeah.
Right? Really doesn't say anything about whether or not you believe in God, like as a being.
Right.
And that's what I don't believe in. I don't think there's a being. I don't think there's a sky daddy.
Yeah.
You know?
guy in a
I don't believe that.
A white beard. No.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that.
Yeah. I don't buy into that.
Yeah.
I think it's silly. And
it is silly.
And it's so clearly constructed by men. I mean, like, the history of the Bible is like, it's so clearly written by dudes.
Yeah.
And like, yes, it's divinely inspired, or it's the word of God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, if it's a King James Bible, because then it was totally rewritten to suit the king. So no. And I don't believe that I don't believe in divine inspiration. I don't believe that the word of God can be, you can't prove that. Like, dudes hear voices now and we're like, give him psychotropics.
But you can look at divine inspiration not in a religious sense. You could look at divine inspiration as you just wake up one morning and you have a brilliant idea and you're inspired to do something for no reason whatsoever.
So the religious person would be like, thank you, God, you gave me this. And then the non-religious person is like, I've got a great idea.
But isn't it the same thing? Sort of.
If the idea is, let's say it's two guys in parallel universes and they have the same exact idea, and it's like, the guy creates a new kind of toaster or some stupid shit. And it changes,
it's a toaster.
And it changes life for a small segment of the population. But it's meaningful. The meaningful
I call
toaster.
it the toaster.
It's an eye toaster. You see, it's a telephone and you have toast. But point being that it doesn't matter where the inspiration came from.
I'm just having pictures of the eye toaster.
I know, right? Like, hello? Oh, no, it's not a phone call. My toast is ready.
Sorry.
Now someone has to make that. But yeah, like, you don't need... The idea of divinity isn't necessary for that idea to happen. It's just attribution of the idea on guy A over here in dimension A, and dimension B, the guy's just like, I had a great fucking idea. I don't know, maybe I got drunk last night, or, it just came to me.
Yeah.
So the idea moves forward in both dimensions, but it doesn't really matter where it comes from or what you call where it comes from. Do you know what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
There is benefit to religion. I'm not saying there's not. Because, again, community, organization, like belonging, these are things we need. But we're celebrating, or like, not celebrating, I guess, but we're utilizing religions that have been around for thousands of years and have no real place in modernity. Not really. Like, I mean, there's a lot of different arguments about morality and ethics that some people like, oh, it comes from religion, and I tend to follow Christopher Hitchens, that Dawkins kind of thing. Like, right. That all predates religion, all of it. Religion has been invented and reinvented thousands of times, and the only ones we know about are the ones that were written down. Yeah. So we're talking about 10, maybe 15,000. I don't know when writing really started, cuneiforms or whatever. But we're talking about just a little sliver of civilization, or the birth of civilization. Like, if you want to call civilization, like, tribes, pre-agrarian, or what's the word? Agriculture, before farming, agrarian societies, I think. Yeah. Which is, I guess, a lot of people would say that's the birth of civilization. Because you have to organize in one place and you can't be nomadic. But there was religion as soon as there was man, as soon as we could communicate to each other and say, hey, why are we here? And we need explanations. Yeah. I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said a million times. Right. I get that. And I'm not saying it as well or as eloquently as lots of other dudes. Mm-hmm. But I don't see how we still need those. Like, we have explanations for a lot of things now. And, like, okay, so there's explanations for something, let's say, I don't know, the Bible has explanations for things, right, and they're just wrong. Well,
what you're kind of getting at is a sort of materialistic view, which has pretty much dominated, the Western world for hundreds of years. Not 100 years, but, like, I don't know, like, ever since science became, okay, we have the scientific method, boom, there you go. So things are things, and that's it.
A couple of centuries.
A couple centuries tops. But I think there's a fundamental flaw in that. And the fundamental flaw is, I think humans look at things not as things. We tend to think the meaning of a thing first. And then we go, okay, that's a thing. For example, like, you look at... I can't remember who said this, but it was really fascinating. It involved Elvis, and someone, he was. I think this professor was fascinated by so many people gathering around Elvis's guitar. Why are they gathering around Elvis's guitar? It's just a guitar. The thing,
like in Graceland or something.
Yeah, it's in Graceland, but there's hundreds of people go to see this guitar and the reason is
it's symbolic.
It's symbolic. That guitar has meaning. That guitar can put you in another world. That can make you think about Elvis's life, how he, just sat down and played guitar, even though I don't even think he played guitar.
Not well.
But the idea of it, that guitar is more than just a guitar.
Because it was Elvis's.
Because it was Elvis.
And because
guitar.
Elvis has meaning to them.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Elvis fan.
I'm just saying.
Obviously Elvis is a big part of your life.
Yes, he is.
And I don't dislike Elvis. I love Elvis. Don't get me wrong, but I just see Elvis as an entertainer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And as a musician, I'm like obsessed with musicians.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, if someone was like, "Here's Paul McCartney's bass," I'd be like, for like 12 minutes or something like that. And then I'm like, I'm cool. Can I touch it now? Because it's like you're sharing space with something well, for me it'd be like, I'm touching something. I'm sharing physical space, like atoms and molecules, with someone that I totally idolize.
Yeah. So the question is, what's more real? Is it the materialistic view of the world that we look at? Like, okay, that's just a guitar that Paul McCartney played on, or is
to
it
some people it's just like, who gives a fuck? Right?
Yeah, some people, who gives a fuck?
Like, fuck Paul McCartney.
Yeah, but to you that meant something.
Yeah,
it meant more to you than just a guitar.
Sure.
Oh, you know what? Let's end on that. Unless you want to take the last word. We kind of
steak.
Steak.
Small amount of peas. It's Family Guy, just for you. Yeah, I see your point. Like I see where that there is a materialistic, or the idea of materialism and like symbolism, but there's a difference between being moved by something.
Yeah.
I know it existed. There is proof that Paul McCartney was real, right? Mm-hmm. And there's, depending on who you talk to, there's proof or there's no proof of Jesus existing.
Right. And
that doesn't deny the possibilities of the Christian God or anything like that. But I fall into that camp of, I like things to have been evidenced, you know? And if you say, I've got an apple behind my back, I'm going to ask you to produce that apple. And if you say, you can't ask me if it's there, I'll be like, well, then you're fucking crazy and I'm walking away from you. But for some reason, when people do that with their religious beliefs, we have to respect that.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with that. Like,
right.
Patton Oswalt has a whole thing about, like, why do I have to respect your beliefs if I think they're crazy?
Yeah.
You don't respect a schizophrenic guy on the street, coming up to you and asking you if you shit an orange, But that could be his whole religious structure, So, yeah, like, I'm very respectful of people. I think people are fascinating.
Yeah.
I love them. Sometimes I hate them when I know them personally well enough to hate them. And I think people can be great within and without religion.
Yeah.
I think people rely on it too much for meaning. And they rely on it too much for some people, I think it's a shortcut to morality, but it's actually not. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with someone about religion when their argument was like, but that's where morality comes from, but I wasn't able to convince them that they're basically wrong. Yeah. Because empathy is the basis of all morality. Mm-hmm. And that we're social animals, we live in groups. Mm-hmm. And we need to be in groups to survive. Right. I actually just wrote a short paper about this. So, I'm talking about conformity and obedience and groups and social influence. And,
don't be a conformist, man.
Well, that's conforming is not a bad thing most of the time, actually.
It's what keeps you alive.
Yeah, it's groupthink. It's like, well, there's this guy Ash who had these studies 50 years ago, and they get a bunch of people in a room, and there's really only one person who is like not in on it, the actual subject. Yeah. And they'd be like, here are these lines, line 1, and then one of them would be the same length, and the other ones would be different lengths, and they'd be like, which one is the same length? And they'd go around the room, and he'd be the 5th or 6th person usually, and like, two, and for 1 or 2 times they'd all say the correct answer, and then all of a sudden, like, they'd change it, and the first person, like, let's say the answer should be 2. The first person would be like 3. Second person 3. and so on. And you can, like, even in the videos, you see the guys, like, kind of looking like, what is, am I seeing this wrong? What is happening? And then in 30 some odd percent, like 35% of the time, the subject, the person who is being tested, and without realizing how they're being tested, or that everyone else is a compatriot and they're like involved or confederate, they're involved in the test.
Yeah.
They'll change their answer to go along with the group. And you can just see that, like, it's this cognitive dissonance, like, am I saying this? What is happening? No, yeah, they're right. It's 3. But lots of people will still be like, no, it's this one. But we need that.
Yeah.
We need to be able to go along with the group so we can survive.
Yeah.
And like the guy was like, am I saying it wrong? And like you question your own, you question your reality.
Yeah.
Dude, psychology. It's fascinating stuff,
It's fascinating stuff. We circled back to psychology, and I think that's it. We're good, man.
Sure,
That was a great talk.
I could talk for hours. Because I go on tangents.
We'll definitely. You should definitely come back.
I would love to,
definitely
man.
do this again.
We should do one with. We should get Mr. James West.
Oh yeah, we should talk about L.A.
Talk about L.A. And I haven't seen him in a while anyway, and he's a fun dude.
Yeah, absolutely. We will. I think that might be in the works coming soon.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming, man. I appreciate it.
It was fun.
And yeah,
I'm gonna go play with your dog now.
do it.